Hello and welcome to Restoration Messianic Fellowship in Morristown, Tennessee, and to the Omer count of 2026. Here is the blessing. It says, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzvanu al sefarat haomer. Blessed are you, O Adonai our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with his commandments and has commanded us concerning the counting of the Omer. So with that, today is the fifth day of the counting of the Omer. Hayom Chamisha Yamim LeOmer. So I wanted to share something that really kind of hit me just the other night at First Fruits at our service at that, and I wrote it down today just because it's kind of striking when you think about it. You know, if you're keeping unleavened bread, where you're refusing or you're declining for eating leavened bread, regular bread, throughout this 7-day period, it's remarkable to consider how unique that is and how radically different that is for the rest of the world. And I'm going to play very generous with some numbers here when you consider, that there are roughly 16 million Jewish people in the world. And I'm going to assume for the moment that every single one of them is keeping unleavened bread and not eating leavened bread at all. And then if you're generous once again and you add the Gentiles that are likewise keeping unleavened bread and refusing or deciding not to eat regular bread with the rest of the world, and you say that's maybe 4 million people. That's just a guess on my part, but so you're talking maybe 20 million people tops are keeping unleavened bread in this way, and then you compare that to the entire worldwide population, and you're talking roughly 8 billion people, and that is, when you do the math on that, that's 0.0025 of the world's population are keeping unleavened bread. So out of 8 billion people, 20 million people is 0.0025. And that is extraordinarily small. That is what being set apart and distinguished from the rest of the world that keeping unleavened bread is. Because, bread is a natural part of life and living. It's the most, one of the most common elements of every meal in every culture. So it is truly breaking the norm, where you're rejecting for this week to make a statement about rejecting the pleasure and the treasure of the world in order to follow God and his command, and even to identify with his people. That's, as a Gentile, I am identifying with his people by keeping unleavened bread. And it reminded me of this passage from Hebrews chapter 11 in talking about Moses and his own walk of life as he grew up in Pharaoh's household with all of the trappings of Egypt, with all of the delicacies, all of the luxuries, all of the status of Egypt. And he chose to forego all of that to identify with his people and follow God's ways and his commands, so he can fulfill the role that God had called him to. Hebrews 11 verse 24 starts like this. He says, by faith, out of his faith, because of his trust in the Lord, or realizing that the gods of Egypt are not real, by faith Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Instead, he chose to suffer mistreatment along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. And he considered the disgrace of Messiah as greater riches than the treasures of Egypt, because he was looking ahead to the reward. That is an amazing statement, looking ahead to the reward. Even Moses, in choosing to identify with his people, choosing to suffer with them and for them, is really he's looking forward to what Messiah was willing to do for all of us, but looking forward to the working and the suffering of Messiah that brought about our salvation. So I just wanted you to consider how we need to identify with his people. We need to identify with the suffering of Messiah for even just a brief period of refusing or denying something that is so easy, so readily available, and that's that the leavened bread, because it really teaches us a picture about the importance of our sanctification, because a little leaven will leaven the entire batch, entire bowl of dough. And so the things that we take for granted, the things that we neglect, or the things we think are no big deal, can become a big deal in the life of the believer. And we are choosing, by participating in this week, choosing to identify with his people, choosing to suffer mistreatment, because it is inconvenient to try to do all of this, suffer mistreatment alongside the people of God, rather than enjoy the passing pleasure of sin. And in doing that, we are better prepared to identify with the disgrace of Messiah and being identified as one of his, and not being willing to deny his name, which will always come, and what we are seeing more and more in our day. So with that, I wanted to thank you for joining me for the counting of the Omer, day 5. I always want to encourage you to come to our services every Saturday at 1 o'clock, as it goes for about a couple of hours or more. And we actually do have a service this Wednesday on the last day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread at 2 o'clock. I would encourage you to come and participate with that. We just look forward to all that God is continuing to do in us. So may the Lord bless you and show you his favor. Amen.